You might have a Grand Trine and not realize it. And this is an extremely auspicious configuration, aspect pattern that your birth chart can have that indicates that you basically have the superpower of whatever element the Grand Trine is in. In the way that I define it and the way that traditional ancient astrologers defined it, it's a fairly rare aspect pattern. And knowing that you have this gift, this superpower, can change your life. It changed mine. I personally have a Grand Water Trine, which I will break down and explain for you in this video, what it means, how to determine if you have one or not, and how to actually break down all the nitty-gritty specifics of the planets and the houses and the elements so you can get real clarity on how to activate this gift and make sure you actualize your potential. If you have a Grand Water Trine, you are the archetype of the healer, the mystic. If you have a Grand Fire Trine, then you are the creator, the leader. If you have a Grand Earth Trine, then you are the world builder. If you have a Grand Air Trine, you are the genius, the social architect. It's very easy for people to sleep on these gifts. I could say this to you and you might be thinking, she's overblowing this. This is dramatic. This isn't really me. I don't know if that really identifies, even if you know you have this Grand Trine, because a lot of times people will sleep on their gifts. This aspect pattern is one of complete ease, flow, harmony, and abundance. And so a lot of times when we're in situations that are comfortable, we just take it for granted. We don't realize what a gift it truly is that we have, and oftentimes don't bother to actualize it because we think that's not really a big deal, you know, everybody has that or something. But no, this is actually fairly unique and important that you contribute what your gifts are to the world because we need you. So in the way that traditional ancient astrologers defined this, there aren't any software programs that are just going to spit out and tell you that you have a Grand Trine or not. There are software programs that will say you have a Grand Trine, but they don't define it in the way that the ancient astrologers would, in the way that I'm about to explain to you, which from my perspective has much more meaning and logic behind how it works. You might find that you resonate with a different astrologer's perspective on the Grand Trine. You might like to try out some different definitions, but I'm going to break down here how Hellenistic astrologers would have considered whether or not you have a Grand Trine. My name is Alina and welcome to my channel Promethea Astrology. I am the astrologer for creatives and change makers, and today I'm offering you basically a free workshop in how to break down and analyze your specific Grand Trine given your specific unique placements. There is a blog post that I wrote that goes along with this, so if you would rather read through things quickly rather than listen to a video, you can check that out. And accompanying the blog post and the videos here, I also have a tool that I made where you can submit the different planets, element, and rising sign that are a part of your Grand Trine, and it will return to you a detailed report of what that specifically means for you. And this is not AI generated. I wrote everything that is in there. I just created the software to sort of piece together what is relevant to you given your placements that you will tell me in the form. There are also timestamps below, so if you already know a lot of this and you already know that you have a Grand Trine in the traditional sense and want to just skip to how to interpret that, check out the timestamps. I'm going to go over broadly what the definition is, specifically what my definition is, what each archetype really means and embodies, how to determine if you have a Grand Trine in the way that I define it specifically. So I'll walk you through some common apps and software programs that you might use and show you how to identify whether or not the placements are present that indicates that you have this Grand Trine, and then a detailed interpretive breakdown. Okay, so universally, broadly, the most kind of everybody agrees on this definition of a Grand Trine is going to be 3 placements in your birth chart that essentially make an equilateral triangle. Usually this is going to be blue lines in the chart that look like a triangle, an equilateral triangle specifically. There's different types of triangles. That is essentially what it is in the most abstract universal sense. My definition as a Hellenistic astrologer is going to be specifically if these three placements, or it could be more than three placements actually, if these three placements all share the same element, if the zodiac signs that these three placements are in have the same element. So for instance, if you have one of the traditional planets in all three water signs, then that's a grand water trine. Some astrologers will consider basically any astrological point as a part of a grand trine. I, as a traditional Hellenistic astrologer, am only looking for if you have one of the 7 traditional planets or the rising sign as a part of your grand trine. So that would be the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, or your ascendant. Those would be the 8 different things that I would consider to be a part of a grand trine. So if you have placements in all of the water signs, but one of those placements is the North Node, or your lot of fortune, or a asteroid like Lilith, or an angle like the Descendant or the MC, or an outer planet like Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, I would not consider any of those things. This is why my definition is a little bit more unique. I would argue that most people probably do have a grand trine if you expand your definition to include all of these other astrological bodies and points. And you might find value in that. You might look into your astrology and find I do have placements in all of the fire signs. They're just not the traditional planets or my ascendant. And you might resonate with what the information is that I'm giving you. I won't get into how to delineate those other placements, but you might want to look into it for yourself and see if it seems true for you and helpful. So the sign placement is extremely important because each of the grand trines is either a grand water trine, earth trine, air trine, or fire trine. And so it's called that because all of the 3 zodiac signs that share that element are present. However, you could have a grand trine that's very close by angle. So this means that each of the planets involved are nearly exactly 120 degrees apart, but maybe they fall in different signs. So for instance, if you had a chart that looked like Mars at 1 degrees of Pisces, Mercury at 1 degree Cancer, but then instead of a Scorpio placement, you had Libra, just 29 Libra. So it's only 1 or 2 degrees off from being a perfect triangle, but it's a different sign. I would not consider that to be a grand water trine because you don't have all 3 water signs present. Libra is not a water sign, even though this is still a very auspicious and harmonious configuration. It's just not a grand water trine. And you could say, sure, it's a grand trine, and that will probably create ease and flow within these different parts of you that the planets represent there, but it's just not going to be relevant to what I'm talking about here today in the things that I'm delineating as far as these big archetypes like the mystic goes. So there's the elemental piece and then there's the angular piece. So from my perspective as a traditional Hellenistic astrologer, even if your grand trine by angle is not very close, so for instance, in the software programs, they're probably only going to tell you that you have a grand trine if all of your planets are trine within a certain number of degrees. So if they're within, 10 degrees or 8 degrees or 5 degrees of being perfectly trine to each other. And I would broaden the definition from there actually and say that even if by angle, maybe one of the planets in this grand trine is like 20 degrees off from being perfectly trine to the other 2, I would still consider it because you have all 3 zodiac signs that share that element there. In the ancient Greek understanding of the aspects, the literal Greek word for aspect means to witness. And so when planets are trine to each other, it's because they can see each other, they can relate on this level. And the reason that they can see each other and relate is because they share a quality. So for the example of the trine, the quality that they share is that they have the same element and also gender. And if 2 planets are square, then they share the same quadruplicity. If they're sextile, they just share the same gender. If they're opposite, they share the same gender and quadruplicity. So trine is going to be the most positive, the most harmonious aspect. And the reason it exists is because these signs relate to each other on their shared elemental and gender qualities. So that's why I would consider you to have a Grand Trine, even if the angle is not very close, because the planets there can still relate to each other on this level, this elemental level. And so the Grand Trine could just be a minimum of 3 planets, 1 in each of the 3 zodiac signs that share that same element, or it could be more than 3 planets. It could be everything. You might have all of your placements in these signs that share the same element. So it could be 4 planets. Maybe you have 2 planets in Scorpio, 1 in Cancer, 1 in Pisces. Maybe you have 3 Cancer placements, 2 Scorpio placements, and 1 Pisces placement. So it could be even more than 3. And if it is more than 3, then that will probably just amplify the gift and superpower that you have there. And we can incorporate more of ourselves into whatever that gift is that you have. So to just really quickly define the Grand Trine, then, it's going to be if you have one of the 7 traditional planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, or the Ascendant in zodiac signs that share the same element. So a grand water trine would be placements in the 3 water signs, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio. A grand fire trine would be placements in all 3 fire signs, Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. A grand earth trine will be placements in all 3 earth signs, Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. And a grand air trine will be placements in all 3 air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And then we can kind of evaluate the strength of the Grand Trine based on how close the placements are to being at the same angle. So the closer to 120 degrees. So therefore, if they're all at 15 degrees in each of those signs, that'll be an exact Grand Trine. That'll be the most intense, the most magnified superpower. And the further away, it gets a little bit less strong. And then also we can look at the number of placements. So if you have more than 3 placements in those 3 signs that share the same element, then that will also magnify the strength of the Grand Trine there. So now I'm going to show you in detail how to literally use the software to determine this, because like I said, there's not a software program that will tell you whether or not you have a Grand Trine in the way that I define it at this point that I know of. So here is what you would do if you are using Cafe Astrology on my blog post. This is the software that I recommend because it's just really convenient the way it's laid out to identify. So I'll pull up a little screen recording of how you do that here. Essentially, you will put in your birth information, birth date, place, time, name if you want, and it will give you, if you scroll down past the natal report and go to the planet positions and houses, then there's just a nice little list of each zodiac sign and what placements you have there. So in the first table, the first 7 placements are the traditional planets. So that's what we're going to look at. And then in the next table, the very first line of the next table that says Placidus has which your rising sign is. So those are the 8 things we're going to look at. The first 7 things on the first table and then the first one on the second table. And what you will do is check all 3 water signs first to see if you have a grand water trine. Look for if you have something in Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And again, it has to be one of those 8 things for the definition and tools that I'm about to offer you. And again, you could expand past this if you want to, but for me and what I do, this is how I would define it. And if you see, okay, no, I don't have those signs, all 3 present, then look for the fire placements. Do you have placements in all 3 fire signs, Sagittarius, Leo, and Aries? Or do you have placements in all 3 air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, or all 3 earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn? So you're going to actually have to look and do some reading and see, is this present here or not? And then you might want to write down which signs and which planets are present if you do have a Grand Trine. And this is very exciting news, so we can get into it. And then in CoStar, if you use the CoStar app, you'll just go to the bottom right corner that says you, and then it'll pull up all of your placements. And the very first 8 things listed there are the 8 things that I would consider. Or it may not be listed in exactly that order for you, actually. So you'll just make sure that you exclude Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus when you're using CoStar, and just look at the other ones and see, again, do you have all 3 air, water, earth, fire signs present. And then on the Chani app, it's not as condensed in just one place. You kind of have to scroll a little bit, but you'll just go to the thing in the middle bottom that says me. And then the first 8 things there will be the first 8 things that I'm telling you to consider. So you'll look at the sign placements of each of those and note, do I have something in all of the water signs, etc. So really not too bad to figure out, but you do actually have to look into it. You can't just have a software program tell you. Unfortunately, you'll have to literally see with your eyes. And you can, if you're really excited about it, look at the degree points of each one, because like I said, even though a software program might not say that you have a Grand Trine, I might say that you have a Grand Trine because of the aspect angle not being exact. So you can see how close or far things are. So I would say if all 3 placements are less than 3 degrees apart from each other, that is like very, very intense and strong. If they're less than 10 degrees, like that's pretty strong. And if they are more than that, then you still have the Grand Trine, but it's not going to be as intense. But again, if you have multiple planets, then it does kind of amplify again. So you'll see for yourself if it sounds true and feels resonant or not. Okay, so you figured it out and you have the Grand Water Trine. What does this mean? So you have every version of water. You have cardinal water, fixed water, and mutable water. In astrology, this is all the different versions of water that exist in the zodiac. So you have the water superpower, the water gift. And water in astrology has to do with things like the emotions, intuition, healing, compassion, empathy, merging, mysticism, depth. And so you will have sort of the ability to attain mastery over those sorts of things. And that's why, to put it simply, I gave this type of Grand Trine the archetype of the healer or the mystic. But you could also think of it as just mastery over the intuitive emotional realms, and maybe a different archetype or idea will come to mind for you with that. Again, oftentimes upon hearing this, people will potentially not identify that in themselves. They'll think, oh, like, I don't know, maybe, I guess I could see that, but... And a lot of times that's just because you have not valued this thing that comes so easily to you, because it comes so easily. So it seems like it's just whatever, or not something to really write home about. But in fact, it is. And it's very important. If you have the Grand Fire Trine, then you have all 3 versions of fire present in your chart: cardinal fire, fixed fire, and mutable fire. This is every type of fire in astrology. So what this means is fire generally, you have mastery, or the kind of the fire gift, the fire superpower over these qualities that include things like leadership, bravery, energy, passion, drive, integrity, and real access to the self in a way. And so the archetype that I gave this was the leader or the creator, because it's really people who have the drive and energy to bring something strongly into the world that is their passion. You have the energy to create. You have the drive, the willpower to create. You have the bravery to overcome obstacles in order to actualize or lead people into whatever the vision is that you have, wherever your passion guides you. If you have the Grand Earth Trine, then you have all 3 Earth zodiac signs present in your birth chart. We have cardinal Earth, fixed Earth, and mutable Earth. Every type of Earth. You have the Earth superpower, the Earth gift. So what does Earth mean? Earth is our ability to be grounded, stable, centered, practical, connected to reality. You have mastery over the real world, the real earthly material existence that we all are in. And I really consider this to be the world builder, because the Grand Earth Trine people are able to really be connected to what is here and now. And sometimes, it can be difficult to go from your ideal to what the actual reality of the situation is, but mastery over the earthly realm, especially with the mutable and the cardinal and the fixed earth. This is the builder of something that is real and tangible here and now. These people are realistic and practical and able to create something that will last. And then the Grand Air Trine people, you have every version of air: cardinal air, fixed air, and mutable air, the air superpower, the air gift. And so what this means, air in astrology is associated with things like the intellect, the mind stuff, thinking, rationality, also kind of social intelligence, and kind of light playfulness. And so the Grand Air Trine people I consider to be the archetype of the genius or the social architect, because sometimes it depends kind of on the planets, but also your sun, moon, and rising and other things. But sometimes this intelligence can manifest in the form of very analytical, sciencey, data-y, left brain thinking ways. And sometimes it can manifest in more social ways, coming up with social structures that are very effective and understanding how to navigate socially, communicate, and really just be kind of a fluid socialite in some way. You have mastery over the social, mental, intellectual realms, or the potential if you choose to actualize it and place value on this gift that you have. So the Grand Trine really represents your potential. Much of my point of doing this is to convince you that this is important and a gift that you really do have, and to recognize that in yourself, because it's so easy to take for granted. It's so easy to choose to ignore or not kind of refine and actualize these things, because the Grand Trine has so much ease and flow. It's just can be very natural to let it be without putting any effort into it. You know, a Grand Trine is not one of like tension and drive and stress that's like, I have to do something. No, it's very easy and like supportive and just natural. It's the water you swim in, it's the air you breathe. And so it can be hard to recognize and think, oh, this is actually really important and valuable, because it's just something that feels like a given to you. Maybe sometimes in some people. Now, having the water superpower, the water gift, does not necessarily mean that you will use the superpower for good or evil. It can sort of depend on the planets and the disposition and the context you're born into, many things. So although it's very likely that this will be constructive, I thought it'd be important to point out kind of the shadow side, the possibilities of using the superpower for less sort of beneficial ends. So a Grand Water Trine could also look like someone who is quite toxic, could be emotionally manipulative, could be using the intuitive emotional realms to harm in some way. And for the Grand Earth Trine, the shadow side could look like the rigid one, the unchangeable one, the stubborn one, someone who is quite stuck in their ways and unwilling to adapt or change, quite certain and black and white in some way. And the Grand Air Trine shadow can look like the flighty one, the dreamy one, the ungrounded one, someone who's just not in reality with things and unable to really tether themselves or be dependable or consistent or actualize things in the material world. And for the Grand Fire Trine, this can look like someone who might be overly aggressive or overly passionate or even kind of selfish, self-centered, narcissistic on the shadow side. Not to say that this is you, of course. Again, it is more likely that you are probably using things constructively because the Grand Trine is such a positive, harmonious aspect. But I think it's important to point out that it's possible to use your powers for more or less constructive purposes. To get into the specifics now of how to interpret this, given which planets are present for you, my framework for understanding this is related to internal family systems, if you're familiar with that therapeutic practice. So I'm taking a little bit of a psychological approach here, although I'll also go through some literal examples as well. But you can think of each of the planets as sort of different parts of you, and they play different psychological functions. So depending on which planets are involved, that will tell us what are the tools, what are the parts of you that you use to manifest this power. So for instance, we can look at each planet one by one, and then as we do, you can see for yourself, okay, so when I'm in this part of my mind, when I'm using this psychological function in tandem with these other 2, 3, etc., whatever the planets are, however many planets there are that consist of your Grand Trine, that combination of psychological functions, when I'm using those, that will be how I'm in my full power actualizing this gift, using these different parts of myself together. So to start with the moon is our subconscious emotions, feelings. It can be the literal mother as well, or qualities we inherit from the mother. It's our ability to nurture others and be nurtured, and also the function to sort of heal ourselves and others. Can also be related to fertility sometimes. And the physical body can also be kind of the identity in some ways, especially if you have a night chart, then it could be more related to who you are and your identity, how you are in private settings. So if you have a Grand Trine that involves the moon, consider how you would describe those parts of yourself, either the emotions, the feelings, or you could think about maybe using the physical body and your physical self. Maybe that's part of where this comes alive, or it could be something that you actualize using gifts you inherited from your mother. It could be a gift you actualize actually with the help of your mother in some literal way, or maybe it will require you to nurture yourself or be in a position of nurturing others to fully access. And those can be related as well. If the sun is a part of your Grand Trine, then this will have to do with potentially the ego, the persona, the light you shine into the world, who you are, your self-identity. Could be qualities also inherited from the father or the literal father, similar to the moon, but for the father instead of the mother. Your vitality or your reputation, how you're known, or just the mind, kind of broadly. So if you have a Grand Trine involving the sun, then maybe this is something that comes alive more so when you're really in that self energy, but that persona, like the way that you want to be perceived or people generally perceive you, kind of the energy that you give off in the public sphere or around other people. If that is different than how you are in private, usually there is sort of a difference in some way. Or again, it could be something that you actualize using qualities you've inherited from your father or with the help of your literal father sometimes. And if the Grand Trine involves Mercury, this can be your analytical function, your left brain thinking, your ability to break things down and understand them in their components, to get into the details, the nitty-gritty, or it can be your ability to work with tools and technology. Mercury also sort of functions in a business and commerce sense, your ability to kind of make sense and navigate different systems and transactions. And it's also communication, your voice, your literal voice, your words, your writing, your speech. If you're into science or data analysis or really just breaking things down in this kind of mathy way, that could be a piece of it. Your logic, your ability to adapt, your sense of humor, your craftiness, your ability to kind of make things with the hands or work with tools, could be technological or literal kind of physical tools. So when you're in that kind of brain space or doing those types of things, that might be a piece of how this gift is actualized for you. Or you can think of the psychological piece like that, or it could be more literal, where maybe it's when you are literally in your business, creating your business, or doing math, or doing science, or writing, or also dream interpretation and alchemy can be significations of Mercury. So maybe using something like that as well could be a part of how you really access this gift that you have. And then for Venus, if Venus is a part of your Grand Trine, then this can be your aesthetic, your ability to love and relate and create environments of peace and harmony and ease. It could be your sensuality, your magnetism, your beauty, the things that you're attracted to or that attract people to you, your social intelligence, your creativity, and your ability to influence the environment in a peaceful, harmonious, beautiful way. Or externally, this can look like using literal visual art in some way, or in collaboration with your friends or lovers. Those are parts of Venus. Or music, using music, or theater, or poetry, any of these kind of creative artistic efforts. Money can be a significator for Venus as well. So maybe something about the way that you relate to or use or attract or spend money. Maybe this is something that happens with the use of your spouse, or maybe it has to do with your sexuality. It could be any number of these types of things that allow this gift to really come online in combination with the other planets. For Mars, this would be, if you have Mars in the Grand Trine, the part of you that is assertive, that is able to get things done, your drive, your will to action, your sense of bravery, and also your ability to be in uncomfortable situations and either initiate conflict or be in conflict, and to really just assert yourself bravely into situations where it's required. Could also look like your passion, your physical energy, athleticism, your sexual energy sometimes can be part of Mars, your physical strength or your symbolic strength, internal strength, integrity. Your speed could be your literal speed, your ability to act quickly and on instinct, your ability to protect and defend others or yourself. And in an externalized context, this could be maybe part of coming online during something like martial arts, if you are into the martial arts, or if you are in some military position. It can be also related to things like more larger scale conflict or sports, or just navigating conflict in general, if that's a part of what you do. And if Jupiter is a part of your Grand Trine, then this can be the part of you that is able to really conceptualize the big picture thinking, your gifts, your luck, what in your life is abundant. It could be related to your philosophy, your ideology, your religious beliefs, your generosity, your grand visions, your joy and your optimism, your ability to grow and expand. So something like maybe the gift coming online during big picture thinking, or in the way that you are able to relate to your ideologies, philosophies, religion, or something like that. And external manifestations of Jupiter could be maybe this comes online during or in places of like legal systems or philanthropy or religious institutions. Sometimes Jupiter can be associated with authority at large, or sort of big, broader scale institutions and leadership in those places. And if you have Saturn as a part of your Grand Trine, then maybe your gifts come online when you are in isolation on your own, or your ability to discipline yourself or maybe others. It could be your ability to be masterful at whatever it is that this is relating to for you. Your ability to create structures, could be physical structures or mental structures. Your relationship to time and time management. Your ability to create and hold boundaries. Your standards, your long-term thinking. Your ability to be realistic and sacrifice. Your sense of responsibility. Your ability to set limits and exercise restraint. Your seriousness. What are you serious about? And in external kind of manifestations of Saturn, this might come online while working with older people. Sometimes Saturn is associated with older people, or maybe in your own old age. It could be related to places of isolation, like hospitals or mental health institutions or retreat centers in a more positive note. Prisons would be associated here as well. Or maybe this comes online in a way that is very slow or takes time. And then if your Ascendant is a part of your Grand Trine, then this will be the totality of who you are, mind, body, and soul. So the gift will come online when you are able to really express and be with who you are, and especially whatever that zodiac sign is, and embodying the qualities there. And this will be the version of you that is not related to your upbringing, your parents, the culture you come from, the real self energy underneath it all, notwithstanding the context that you come from or the way that you have to be in various situations. It's who you are in that more fundamental sense. So that is just an overview of what your tools are for when this comes online for you. And then we can also look at the houses to figure out in what parts of life does this become activated, or you can think of it as what kind of problems do you solve. So because I am a traditional astrologer using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac, then given your rising sign, I can determine which houses the Grand Trine will be in for you. If you tell me the element of the Grand Trine, if it's all water signs, fire signs, earth signs, etc., and you tell me your rising sign, we can work out what houses it's in. So that's how my little tool that I made works when you enter your information into the form. So the Grand Trine will always exist in either, from my perspective as a whole sign house user, house 1, 5, and 9, 2, 6, and 10, 3, 7, and 11, or 4, 8, and 12. So if your Grand Trine is in house 1, 5, and 9, then you will sort of be coming online in relation to yourself, or this gift that you have, this Grand Trine that you have will sort of come online in times when you are relating self to personal creativity to institutions. So you might want to just read my blog post and do the Grand Trine report delineation that I made in order to get lots of different specific examples. It's more than I can really go into in this video, but just a couple examples. So maybe you're able to solve the issue of how can I use my personal creativity in an institution like a university or religious system and still be true to who I am? That's one example. Or it could also be resolving the issue between who you are, your sexuality, and religious institutions, as an example. Or maybe resolving issues with the physical body, sexuality and fertility, and the medical system. Or it could be resolving issues between how you can be true to who you are, have children, and travel abroad. Or could be helping people to resolve issues of integrating their children into large cultural institutions while being true to who they are, or how to reconcile your hobbies with your career and your soul identity. Or maybe you're someone who can really create fun, entertaining gatherings or parties around things like magic or astrology or occult things and really shine in the fullness of who you are in that sort of situation. And these are just some examples. Again, refer back to the blog post, or you have to actually do the little tool on my website to get the full breakdown of every possible combination of this type of thing. And if you have the Grand Trine in house 2, 6, and 10, then you might resolve issues of personal finance, health, and career things. Maybe making money through helping people with their health and daily habits and being well known for that. It could look like resolving issues of food, physical health, and career. Maybe doing something related to health and food for work, or resolving how people perceive your relationship to food and the body, how you look, or something like that. It could be related to your personal values versus your employees and how you manage them as a part of your career. Could resolve tension or come online, resolving issues related to money, social media following, and brand identity could be topics of the houses here. Maybe something like using your daily habits and routines to actualize your life's work and be supported financially for that. Could be someone whose gift come online while working with animals, and maybe relating how people spend their money or their values around animals and animal welfare, and doing this potentially professionally or becoming known for your work with animals and values around that. Could be someone who is able to really activate their power in relation to accidents and mitigating the risk of accidents, or helping people who have experienced accidents. This could be like car accidents or physical injuries or health issues or anything like that, and helping people to navigate their assets in the case of accidents and being known for something like that, like maybe somebody who works with insurance or something like that. But again, refer back to the full post, and you really just have to do the report to get the full possible combination of the way all these things could look. Then House 3, 7, and 11. This could be someone whose gifts come online with their cousins or brothers and sisters, or kind of like broader family, and working with broader family, and potentially also solving the tension between like cousins, family, siblings with your spouse or people's marriage partners, and also maybe like a band or like a musical group or some kind of theater group or any kind of network you're a part of. Or it could be just helping people or yourself or coming online while navigating the tension between friend groups, spouse, and siblings. Could be how you navigate the relationship between communication, spouse, and social media. Maybe some kind of person who talks about relationships on the internet or something like that. Could be someone who has a music band with their siblings or cousins and is able to potentially be in business partnerships with them in that pursuit, or helping people to navigate that sort of thing. Could be related to something like writing for alumni groups about business partnerships, or helping people to find business partnerships through an alumni network and writing about that somehow or something. Could be related to car stuff and maybe gathering groups of people around their passion for their cars in a way that also integrates love and relationships or something like that. Or could be maybe someone whose powers come online as they practice things like divination, astrology, tarot, the I Ching, things like that with their friends and spouse. But again, check the report. You really just have to fill out the report to get all the possible combinations of how this could look. And lastly, house 4, 8, and 12. This is a challenging one to articulate. These are more, these houses can be a little bit dark, but the way that it could look for someone with a Grand Trine in these houses could be mastery and ease and the superpower coming online in the realms of death, spirituality, transformation. Could also be homeland and ancestry relating to kind of spirituality and places of isolation, or maybe a retreat center or something like that. Could be kind of in the realms of death and inheritance and mental health. Could be coming online while working with the parents or grandparents and around things like death and transformation, spirituality, or physical land, taxes and transformation, maybe transforming land and property and being very adept at managing taxation and things around that part of life. Could be related to helping people resolve issues around things that are secret or hidden, and debt and self-undoing regarding those realms, helping people with that sort of thing. Could be relating the physical house, your home, to things like transformation, or maybe initiating your own transformation through isolation in your home. Can also be regarding issues of addiction and debt and parents. There are many different ways this could look. So fill out the report that I have on my website, get your specific delineation, and you'll see all the different possible combinations that you can make with these different house topics. But it's really could look many, many different ways. And, you know, even though I'm trying to be as specific as possible here and give you some really specific examples of the way this could look, depending on which planet is in which sign, depending on your sun, moon, and rising sign, depending on other aspects in the chart and the relationship to everything else going on and the context you find yourself in, you know, this can look so many different ways still. There's no way that I could possibly tell you every single way it could look. And I would have to talk to you to know what the specifics of your life are and how this might look for you, or the way it's already come online that you might not recognize. So if you would like me to help you figure that out, I would love to talk to people with the Grand Trine about how to actualize their gifts, because I really believe that this is extremely important. And if you have a gift, we need it. The world needs it. And I want that to be online and active for you. And the more awareness you have around this, the more volition and autonomy, the more authority, and the more effective you can be in your life with it. Awareness changes everything. It will amplify the ability and can honestly change your entire life. So if you want to talk to me about your Grand Trine, I really, want to talk to you. You could also leave a comment. I would love to hear in the comments. What is your Grand Trine? How did this land? What way did it come online? This will help us learn from each other, how these different things can work out. So feel free to leave a comment. You could also subscribe here. That's really helpful for me. Link in below if you want to read the blog post or try to get that report for you sent to your inbox about how this specifically looks for you. And I think that's all that I'll say for now. Thank you so much for being here. Be well.